This is a top to what we use on stage, but it's very, very special because if you can see, the numbers all go to 11. Look, right across the board. 11, 11,
and most of
11,
the
and then
amps go up to 10.
Exactly.
Does that mean it's louder? Is it any louder?
Well, it's one louder, isn't it? It's not 10. You see, most blokes, be playing at 10. You're on 10 here, all the way up, all the way up, all the way up. You're on 10 on your guitar. Where can you go from there? Where?
I don't know.
Nowhere, exactly. What we do is if we need that extra push over the cliff, you know what we do?
Put it up to 11.
11, exactly. One louder.
Why don't you just make 10 louder and make 10 be the top number and make that a little louder?
These go to 11.
The next handful of minutes, believe it or not, are brought to you by Grapplex. Grapplex, it won't come undone. Or it will. Whatever's sexier.
He sees the stars are out tonight. What's up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to episode 16 of the 69-minute Eargasm. I'm Grant Fletcher, and with me, as always, is the man who was kind enough to lend his...
And well, I don't mean to interrupt you, man, but you're Grant Fletcher. And well, it is I, the quintessential son of Joel Gardner. Grant Fletcher, let me ask you, we have a wager going on social media.
Yeah, we do.
How are we doing?
I checked earlier today. I was about like 30 behind you.
Oh, yeah. No. Is that right?
Oh, no. Yeah, that's right. Well, you've already decided
that's crazy.
What's going to happen.
I've got it all plotted out. I mean, I know you have this little ditty that you would love for me to sing from like The Wizard of Oz or something, like some sort of like Cowardly Lion something. And I'm sure you have these machinations and fabrications of a dangerously creative, vividly over the top mind. You'd probably see me in like some sort of neck brace and bow tie that doesn't take away from the sartorial majesty and splendor of this cowardly lion get up with a lion's beard and a lion's mane and everything else that makes you happy as you jettison yourself off to sleep at night. But meanwhile, what you don't realize is that when I win this wager, and it's a function of when, not a matter of if, you, my friend, are going to be basically in the social media equivalent of Macy's window, and you are going to be singing On the Grand Ship Lollipop, and I am going to enjoy and savor every second of it.
Yeah, here's the deal. I mean, we were talking about gaining roughly about the same amount of followers, right? So the numbers make sense, but percentage-wise, we're talking about pretty much doubling my follower count, and you're going to get like 0.2% more followers here to beat me. So I understand that I have an uphill battle, but to put it in wrestling terms, I'm not just going to lay down and do the job. I know I'm going to work for it. Trying to get to 500 followers at Grant L. Fletcher on Twitter. Check me out, guys. Hit me up. Help me beat Joel if you want to hear him sing "If I Were King of the Forest" by the Cowardly Lion from The Wizard of Oz.
And while that is an incredible thing to think about happening in actuality and in real life, go ahead and follow me at Studmuffin Says. You'll be doing yourself a service. And by the way, I think I'm at something like 9,823 followers right now. That's give or take 0 or 1 either way, depending on whether there's been a purge of like that one follower that wasn't really good for anything and I didn't need them anyway. But what that means is that I am, give or take 1 either way, 177 followers only away from 10,000. And if I could get Grant Fletcher to 10,000 before you get to, whatever is running through your mind, it not that I would cackle with glee, but I wish you all the best.
Thank you. Thank you. Best of luck to you. May the best man win. But we've gone on about that enough, I think. We got a show to do. Of course, first of all, let's go ahead and recap last week's show. John Arezzi, that was our best first week ever for an episode launch. And if you haven't checked that out, definitely go back and check that out. John Arezzi, great conversation. He tells some great stories in there. What say you, Joel?
Yeah, that was a great show. Yeah, we're Skyping back and forth. So if there's a little bit of us talking over each other or a little bit of lag, we apologize. But that was a great show. And yeah, if you haven't heard that one yet, go ahead and give it a listen. It really is, it's a blast.
Yeah, there's a weird lag here going on, but we'll try to figure that out. I'll try to clean that up in post. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge, maybe not. But this episode is also going to be very big too. I mean, we've got another pioneer on this episode as well. Pioneer in the punk rock scene, though.
Yeah, a man that could just as well have been a pro wrestling personality, has the charisma for it, has the knowledge, has the love and the passion for professional wrestling, got his name as an offshoot of one of the Valiant brothers. Had a love. I mean, Bruno Sammartino, just a big admirer, just a big supporter. Same with the Destroyer. Just an amazing guy with an amazing bar that we were on location that we did the podcast at. It was the first time I've done a podcast outside of my home studio in the East Village, Lower East Side of Manhattan, New York City. And I was with Handsome Dick Manitoba himself of the Dictators. And man, I mean, it was an unbelievable time. And he really knows his stuff.
Yeah, definitely. I saw even some of the video there you posted on Facebook there, and he's got a treasure trove of stuff on there. And he's a guy who I could listen to talk, for hours and hours, you know what I mean? Of course, this show is not formatted in such a way, but if you wanted to, you could listen to Dick Manitoba talk for hours. He does have his own podcast. It's called You Don't Know Dick. I recommend it. I checked it out. He does have a more recent episode with Tom Morello of Rage Against the Machine fame on there, and it's a really good listen.
Sometimes this section of the show where we talk with each other feels like it does go on for hours.
Right. It's because you're
and that's not and that's not a slight against me.
No, of course not. Never. Absolutely not.
Everybody follow Grant on Twitter. That's, I know, essentially, out of the kindness of my heart, it's essentially the 2019 equivalent of what in 1979 was to put Grant Fletcher's telephone number on the bathroom wall. But go ahead and give him a follow because I am, if nothing else, a generous man, and I want to let that be known, and I want Grant to not ever be able to say that I hadn't done anything for him.
That's true. I legitimately cannot say that you haven't done anything for me. I don't even know how to segue into this. I think you got a couple things coming up here, though, real soon, Joel, that you might want to tell some people about here.
Hey, man, yeah, I'm going to be, depending on when this airs, this is either happening or has just happened or is about to happen. But this coming weekend, I'm going to be in Asheville, North Carolina at, I want to say it's called Thomas Wolfe Auditorium. It's the annex. It's the 2,500 seater of U.S. Cellular Center in Asheville, North Carolina for Micro Wrestling All-Stars, which is a new regular dealio that I am thrilled to have. It's a lot of fun. If Micro Wrestling All-Stars comes to your town or within 250 miles drive of your town, you better be there. And we can talk about this officially, where we kind of talked about it in mystical terms last week on the John Arezzi podcast on episode 15. But now I can all the way live, through and through, confirm that I will indeed be at StarCast 2 in Las Vegas at Caesar in Tuscany, and I will be there not only doing meet and greet like I was in Chicago late last year with the ECW arena backdrop and doing that photo op and video shoot. Not only will I be doing that, but I have also been tapped by Conrad Thompson, and I'm going to be a producer for some of the content that you're going to see StarCast on Fight TV.
It's going to be awesome, guys. Yeah, if you're going to be out there at StarCast 2, definitely hit up that meet and greet that Joel's going to be a part of here. We'll cover that a little bit more later on in the show as well. And if you can't make it out there, I know you guys are definitely going to check it out on the Fight TV app, so be on the lookout on all the content he's going to be serving as a producer of as well.
Absolutely, and I'm super looking forward to it.
Maybe we can get like a road diary out of you for this show. What do you think about doing something
that? Would be great. I think that would be great for the Eargasm as a podcast and also for my YouTube channel. In case you have not yet subscribed to my YouTube channel, please do that. Joel Gertner on YouTube. And yeah, I'm sure I'll take some great video in Vegas, and I can't wait to throw that up there.
Yeah, it's going to be a blast, guys. Check out Joel's YouTube channel for all that awesome content. Be sure you subscribe to this show. Make sure you're not going to miss out on any episode there. Bonus episode if we're going to end up doing that kind of a thing too with the road diary like we had talked about there. Also, guys, if you could, it'd really go a long way to help us out if you left us a 5-star review.
Yes, please do that. That would be something that would really, really benefit us. It's free for you to do. It only takes a moment, and write something nice about us. We'd really appreciate it.
Yeah, it's sort of like the 2019 equivalent of you tell two friends, and then they tell two friends, and they tell two friends.
And so on, and so on, and so on.
Yeah, it goes a long way to help us get noticed here, help us get more listenership, more followers, and would make the show a lot more sustainable.
That's what social media and stuff is all about. It's not about being antisocial. Otherwise, it would be called antisocial media.
Yeah, it's about knowing too much about people that you know and care about and people you don't know and don't care about.
Oh, follow at Grant L. Fletcher on Twitter, just so I don't have to hear about it. Get a peaceful night's sleep and whatnot without this guy haranguing me about it. And sometimes it's good because sometimes you're on Twitter or you're on your phone, whatever social media, and you're overstimulated. Get with @Grant L. Fletcher, and it'll kind of bring you down a little bit, and this way you'll just be stimulated.
Right.
And when you're feeling stimulated, hit me up @StudMuffinSays.
I'm all about just stimulation, Really sometimes just stimulation. Stimulation is just a little too much for me sometimes. Yeah. All right. It's to be honest with everybody, it's late at night here. I think Bill and I are a little delirious. I just got off work myself. We're recording. I think before this goes any further off the rails, we should probably go ahead and just throw to the show. Before we actually move on to the interview on this episode, though, we're going to switch up the format a little bit there. If you're not as familiar with Dick Manitoba and the Dictators here, we're going to throw to one of their more recognizable tracks.
Yeah, which one are we going to hear that I picked out?
Yeah, I mean, this is one that, you picked out because it fits a little bit more in line with the concept behind at least the title of the 69-minute Eargasm and, of course, the reputation.
Eargasm, and we are back this time. It is the first time I'm recording somewhere other than my home, my studio. It's the first time I'm out in the wild on location, and I'm not just out in the wild. I am out in the wilds of the Lower East Side of Manhattan, New York City, and I might as well be out in Manitoba's wild kingdom because I am here at Manitoba's 99 Avenue B between 6th and 7th with the man himself, the founder of Manitoba's Bar, filled with punk, rock and roll, pro wrestling, boxing, whatever pictures your heart could desire, an unbelievable vibe. If you are from or not from New York City, you need to get to this place in its 20th anniversary year. Started in January 99. We're going to get to more of that history. We're going to get to the history of the Dictators. We're going to get to it all with the man himself, music legend and pro wrestling icon and lover. This is Handsome Dick Manitoba.
Joe Gertner. Pleasure to meet you, sir. I hear nothing but good things about you from my friend, the guy you met in Vegas, Mr. James Jim Tiso. Gertner, were you bar mitzvahed?
I was. I'm official.
That's a tough name to guess, huh? The Jewish.
Yeah. Oh, man, dude.
I got family of Gertler.
Is that right?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
One letter different. Go ahead, baby.
Now, do you know what Gertler means? Have you looked into because I know Gertner is derivative of like Gardner, like Gartner. So it's, I think, Austrian or Prussian, however far it goes back, on my dad's side. And it's essentially gardener, somebody who works in the garden. But I'm curious now. I'm going to look up Gertler because I'd love to know, maybe we're cousins go far enough back.
That's pleasant. Yeah, things got changed.
Yeah, one letter changed at Ellis Island, and boom, you're cousins. Yeah, yeah, awesome. Well, man, I'm glad I'm here. It's my first time here at Manitoba's. It was weird doing a Facebook Live and having the camera on, shooting the exterior of the bar, especially before we came in, because it was as you were walking up to the bar. I even documented my 15-minute walk here before that. So it's interesting because it's like I had the device on and the camera as I was meeting you almost. And it's just weird how that works out that way sometimes. But man, I've been listening to some of the music and I've been reading up on you. You've got a hell of a story. You've had a hell of a life. Is it okay? Can we start from the beginning and talk about your life in terms of growing up, pre-Dictators? Talk about wrestling, growing up, everything. I know you don't look it, but you're 65 or so. So that takes you back to being born in like the mid-50s.
54, yeah.
54. So tell us about the 50s and the 60s in Manhattan and as somebody who loves wrestling and music.
That's big, man. You just bit off huge subjects of my life. It's like saying, tell me about 40 years of your experience with wrestling. Tell me about 20, 30 years of growing up in the Bronx. Tell me, for me, you got to narrow it down to, something like, where'd you grow up in the Bronx? How was that? When did you get into wrestling? I got to You got to narrow it down for me. It's too
Where'd you
big.
grow up in the Bronx, Dick? How was that? And tell us about how your love for wrestling kind of grew.
Grew up in a neighborhood called Williamsbridge, not Williamsburg. It was
Got it, yep.
a very mixed neighborhood, but I would say primarily, if you counted the ethnicities, it was probably primarily Italian. 2 blocks from my house. In those days, you had Chinese food, Italian food. You didn't have Thai food. You didn't have Szechuan. You didn't have Korean food.
Chinese food, I think, was even relatively new. Because from the mid-'50s, you've also got, let's say, on TV, the Honeymooners. And I remember, Ralph and Alice would be going out to sit down at the Chinese restaurant.
Yeah.
And it was a big deal.
You remember the name of the Chinese restaurant?
That they went to in Bensonhurst on Chauncey, which isn't really in Bensonhurst. I have no idea.
That was his real address where he grew up.
Real address. Now, he grew up in Williamsburg, right? And carried the address over to Bensonhurst where it didn't exist. Something like that.
Oh, really?
Something like that. I don't remember the name of the restaurant, though.
Well, they went on New Year's Eve. We're going to Hong Kong Gardens.
That's right. Now that sounds familiar. That's right. Hong Kong Gardens. That's right.
There was no Chinese food, unless you consider a combination. Egg rolls, spare ribs, fried rice.
Right.
Combination plate. But there was Italian food. And I get wonderful Italian neighbors. That's where I got my love. I'm sort of an Italophile. A wonderful Italian family that was like my second mother and father. And they were like my brothers.
I married one.
They were
and
like
the Italian side is half Italian and half Sicilian, and she never lets me forget it.
Yeah, they were like my brothers and family, like my second family. So 2 blocks away from my house was an Italian restaurant, Louis. When we went out for Italian, we went there. And Louis was where they filmed the scene in The Godfather where Michael was with Salazzo the Turk and McCluskey, the police captain. And he went in the bathroom behind the pull box for the toilet and pulled the gun out and shot them both. That was 2 blocks from my house.
Wow.
So that was, that neighborhood. And then I got a call from, rest his soul, Anthony Bourdain's producer saying, we understand you're a real Bronx guy and we're doing a Bronx thing. See, the thing is, they also did a Lower East Side thing. And I was half and half, and I kind of wish they would have done me both, but they picked the Bronx. And I named about a half a dozen places that were that cool, The Godfather. Maybe not that cool. But I said, but what do you want me to do, fellas? It's like, that's where they filmed The Godfather. It's not there for 30 years. That's where they filmed that. It's not there for 20 years. What do you want me to do? Well, what was there from your childhood? There's one place left, White Castle. So yeah, a picture on the Bronx Anthony Bourdain episode. It's me and Anthony sitting outside talking, eating White Castles.
Oh, it's awesome.
So that was. I grew up in a nice, not a Section 8. It was a nice city housing project. 6 buildings, grass, a big thing of grass in the middle. 6 14-story buildings around the perimeter, and everybody looked out for everybody else. Everybody held the elevator doors for everybody. Nobody ran in to get away. Everybody knew everybody. And Pat Cimarelli, my next door neighbor, and all his nephews who were like 300-pound Italian guys. We didn't need security. They had 6 of those guys. They were maintenance. That was our security. And it was a really nice, well-kept, safe, manicured, nice version of a New York City housing project. That's where I grew up. We had fun. We painted lines in the back. Holland Avenue was the back of my building, and we painted football lines, and we'd play, not touch tackle, but touch, 2-hand touch, and we'd do a play, and then there was very little vehicular traffic. So, but when we saw a car turning the corner onto Holland Avenue, all somebody did was yell, "Car!" And nobody even looked. We just moved over to the side. And then you moved over to the side, and then the car passed, you continued to play. So we played football on concrete. So, that was it. It was like a nice place to grow up, relatively nice. Then my parents got like a bigger apartment. They bought an apartment from the city, Mitchell Lama Co-op at Co-op City, the worst place ever, the most soulless shithole ever, which was such a cool place in the 60s called Freedom Land in the Shape of America. Great amusement park, and they shut that down.
Wow.
It's built on marshland. It's built in the northeast corner of the Bronx. It's horrible, hard to get to Manhattan. Winds sweeping in off the water in the winter. It was just horrible. But they got 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, and a terrace. Versus like 2 small bedrooms.
Right.
But to me, it was all about soul.
Yeah.
And the project had soul, and this was thousands, the largest housing project in the world.
Wow.
Thousands and thousands of faceless windows, So that was basically it. And then when I got a little bit older, there's plenty of things to do in the Bronx, plenty of good quaaludes and stuff, and, two-and-alls and plenty of fun things and hash. And then, started getting into heavy stuff. And then the Bronx was just, I outgrew it, and it closed down too early for me. So we would hear about things like, we got hip to like Robert Crumb, and you couldn't get Zap comics in the Bronx. So we'd come down to these, little underground comic book stores and we'd buy little hash pipes. In those days, it wasn't like, it's fucking nuts now. There's like 4,000 giant clear pipes in every window. In those days, it was like, you have a little hash pipe, like a 2-inch hash pipe. You had rolling paper. It was like quiet. It was like us, the freaks.
Right.
It was quiet, And this neighborhood was us. It was ours. It was rock and roll. It was underground. The realtors and the bankers didn't see money here, so let them have that neighborhood. And we had it. It was drug infested. It was endless because we would leave the Bronx at midnight and come now, I got a little older. We'd leave the Bronx at midnight and come downtown, CBGB's for a couple hours, the Mud Club for a couple hours, go get a pretzel and a egg cream over at Dave's Luncheonette on Canal Street and Broadway. And then we would go to a choice of 5 or 6 or 7 after-hours clubs where, anything went. It was like the Wild Wild East, I called it. It was like, if you're not doing an armed robbery, the cops don't give a fuck. And, we would leave at noon. And there were like 7 places to choose from.
It's tremendous.
And that's why we loved the 70s. And one day I was eating Greek food in Astoria, and I look over at the other table, and my ex goes, "Is that Mayor Koch?" And before I turned my head, I said, "It's either Mayor Koch or it ain't Mayor Koch. I don't even have to look." I mean, I looked. I went, "Of course." So I took my little son at the time. He's 16 now. He must have been about 7 or 8. And then I said, "Mayor, I don't mean to interrupt your dinner. May I just say 1 or 2 things to you?" And everybody got up and they were like, "Oh, do you play baseball?" And they wanted to talk to my son. And the mayor stood up. He was like 6'5", and he talked to Jake for a minute, asked him a few questions, and then I ended the conversation with, "Jake, see this man? This man was the mayor of New York City the last time New York City was fun."
That's great. What about, let's start with music. So you're growing up in the 50s and 60s.
Well, 54 to 60 is not the most impressionable musical years.
Right. You're young, you're listening to whatever. Yeah.
Saw Elvis Presley. I kind of looked at him and saw what he did, but it didn't hit me as a 10 or 12-year-old. It hit me as a 6-year-old.
Right. So would you say your first musical decade, if we had to kind of ham-fist it into a decade, would you say the first decade that you're into is the 60s?
I'm a total 100% child of the British invasion.
Now you're speaking my language too. Yeah, I love that stuff.
I mean, that's the road. When I met Keith Richards, I said, "Thank you for putting me on the greatest musical road ever." Because what they did was they took the great rock and rollers and the great blues artists and was so freaked out about how amazing they were. They just added new stuff, louder stuff, their own great songwriting to it. They took this thing that like blew their mind and added the Rolling Stones to it, and the Beatles added the Beatles to it. You know, Ramones added the Ramones to Phil Spector. You know what I mean? So to this day, you know, my favorite songwriters. Brian Wilson's up there, and the band are up there for me as far as Americans go. But otherwise, it's Lennon and McCartney.
Oh, he showed me a tattoo on his arm. Those are their signatures.
That's right, the Beatles. Lennon and McCartney, Jagger and Richard.
Are those autographs that you got, or are those?
No, I took them off the internet.
That's perfect, though. That looks great.
Lennon McCartney, Jagger and Richard, Ray Davies, Pete Townsend. Those are my main English songwriters.
And then the 70s. 70s are a time where you're kind of, for the first half, I guess you're like a teenager. And then by the end of the 70s, you're a grown-ass man. So the 70s must have seen you grow a lot, both musically and in your interests and your hobbies and kind of where you hung out. Tell us a little bit about what life was like in the 70s, especially for you here in New York City in music.
70s was just like, people can't understand that you look at the Fillmore East, what do you call it, the thing that sticks out? You know, it's like way out in the street, the big, who's coming next?
The marquee.
Thank you.
Yeah.
People don't understand. You drive by the Fillmore East on 2nd Avenue and 6th Street.
I just played Password, by the way, with Handsome Dick Manitoba.
Thank you. I can't remember words. And you'd see, like, on the top, it would say, like, Blood, Sweat, and Tears. And then, like, next week, Jimi Hendrix. Then the next week, The Byrds. And then the next week, The Grateful Dead.
Oh, my God.
And it was like, we were so spoiled. Like, we come down from the Bronx, 45 minutes. You know? I can't believe I didn't go see Hendrix. I can't believe I didn't go see The Byrds. I'm not sure if I saw The Byrds. Oh, I saw The Byrds at Spring Weekend in New Paltz, upstate New York.
Oh, wow, yeah.
Hardy University, with MC5 opening up. So I did see The Byrds. I did see The Grateful Dead. I didn't care about Blood, Sweat, and Tears. And I'm sorry I missed Hendrix.
Yeah. Wow.
But that was what it was like being 16. I saw the Stooges at 1969 on the Electric Circus on St. Mark's Place. I saw the Stooges. We played with the Stooges when we first started. And then 69, 70, 71, I saw a whole bunch of shows at the Fillmore East. I saw shows at Queens College. We traveled to Portchester. We traveled to Philadelphia. We traveled to see shows. It was just hard to explain how spoiled, like just endless great bands, as history will note, were in our backyard, and we were spoiled. You know, I got to see the band at Central Park, the Beach Boys in Central Park, Ike and Tina Turner and the Ikeettes, the Rolling Stones at the Garden, Elvis Presley at the Garden.
Wow.
You know, so that was 16, 17, 71, 72, all that. Around 73-ish, we started fucking around with a fanzine called the Teenage Wasteland Gazette.
Nice.
And then after that, that magazine turned into, that was the literary version of the Dictators.
Okay.
And I had never, I have an album that hopefully will come out this year. I had a lot of problems in my life, so I got an offer, and they pulled the offer because they thought I was, they didn't like me because of things that went wrong, which are all right now, but
Good.
They don't give a fuck. Yeah. So I had this record, and on the liner notes that I'm going to write, it's going to be sort of something like somebody like interviewing me, but me interviewing myself. So Handsome Dick, when did you first decide you wanted to be a singer? I never wanted to be a singer. So Handsome Dick, when did you first decide you wanted to go on the radio and be a DJ? I never wanted to go on the radio. So I do a list of that, and then I quote David Bowie, and I'm probably paraphrasing, saying, make art, let people decide whether it's good or it sucks, and then go get busy making more art.
Nice.
And that's how it ended. And I never wanted to do anything. I was best friends with the band. Had to give me a job. They gave me a job as a roadie. I was drunk. I was a terrible roadie. I lost things. I broke things. And then what happened was, once at this place called Popeye Spinach Factory in Sheepshead Bay,
It's right near where I grew up.
Emmons
That's
Avenue,
right near where I was living in Marine Park in Brooklyn. Yeah, man, southeast Brooklyn. That's where I grew up. Yeah.
Really?
Wow.
I got up on stage and I did Wild Thing, and people the hell with it. Chris Stein was there from Blondie. Eric.
His name just came up from Harry Slash, who's a mutual friend of ours. That's so funny that you mentioned his name, because I was messaging with Harry Slash, and I was asking him, have you ever been to some ECW shows? And we'll get to that later in the interview. But in telling me that you have gone to some to ECW shows, he also told me that Chris Stein from Blondie was at one of our Hammerstein ballrooms.
I was there. I saw him.
Same one. Oh, yeah?
Well,
Wow.
I walked past him and I said, "Hey, Chris, you got great seats." I knew Chris was a fan.
The ringing in the background, by the way, fans, I know that you deal with a lot of the tech and a lot of the audio quality. We love you. It's getting better every week. But just want to let you know, this is our first on-location shot, like we told you about, not in the home studio. So we are doing this at Handsome Dick's Bar, Manitoba's, here in Manhattan on the Lower East Side. So every once in a while, you might hear a phone ring. Bar's about to open in an hour or two, so people are calling in wanting to find stuff out. And if you hear a rattle and hum, if you hear a little hiss in the background, that's the ice machine. So it's super authentic.
Good one.
But go back.
It usually will drop. You'll hear the ice.
You'll hear some ice dropping as well, yeah.
So, where were we?
You were mentioning Chris Stein, and then
Chris Stein was at that show, supposedly. As the years go by, more people at the show. A guy named Eric Emerson, who was in a band called the Magic Tramps, who was part of the Andy Warhol crew, was at that show. People went nuts. Ever since then, when they put a microphone in my hand, I don't know what it is. Something blows off my body. Something comes off of me. I think I have this... there's two kinds of what they call that disorder from A to Z.
Bipolar?
There's two kinds of bipolar. I'm pretty sure I got bipolar 2, which is, according to my psychiatrist, something that he considers millions of people walking around without dealing with it, going to bars, taking drugs on the street. He said bipolar 1 is a lot more serious. Bipolar 1 is like really down, and a half hour later you can be like the life of the party. And that's not me by a far shot. If anything, you can see my energy at my age. At anything, I could still put on a great show for an hour and a half. And so that's like what supposedly is something bad is also something good for me, because it's that manicness, that high energy, you know. You want to keep the manicness under control, but you want to have it, the power. And I think that's part of what comes blowing out of me. And
there are pros and cons to that manicness. It can give you a kind of creativity. It could give you a bit of a creative flourish.
Well, it gives me this insane energy at 65, which I've always had. And I still have it. And the minute I put a microphone in my hand, talk, tell a joke, whatever, sing, people respond. And the original songwriter is kind of a dud. And, he's like the guy who should have stayed home on the chalkboard and handed us the songs, because we always found a better bass player than him. Every bass player we ever filled in, it was much better. I always found much better singers than him and the rhythm guitar player who couldn't really sing.
Let me know if you need to take that.
No, I don't never answer it.
All right.
He was a good guitar player, but we found other good guitar players. You don't need amazing rhythm. You need good rhythm guitar players, but the fact that you could sing, you add a whole dimension. So those two guys should have stayed off the road. And the band that became Dictators NYC was a much better band. And a lot of people are like, well, they're not the original. The original is the great band. All right, the original, we were 20 years old. It was fun. It was crazy. It was a new thing happening. I understand that. But that box is closed. And we move on. And this new bunch of guys I played with a couple of years ago was so much fun. And so good that we traveled around the world 2 times a year, 6 weeks a year, and people adored us, and we made more money than we ever made. But we never made any money in the Dictators, so that's not even saying a lot. And the lead songwriter, his mommy died and left him a lot of money. And he took his money and went to a powerful law firm and threatened to sue us if we kept using the name Dictators in the title. So I had bought Dictators NYC, and he forced me, unless I wanted to go to court, to give it up to the 4 members of the Dictators. And nobody could use it without all 4 members agreeing. So he turned into the biggest scumbag ever because me, lead singer, it's not like one of these bands in Las Vegas with one original member or no one. Right. You had the lead singer who made the songs come alive, world famous lead guitar player Ross the Boss, drummer for 20 years, 5 times as long as we ever had a drummer, and Daniel Ray, who worked and wrote songs for the Ramones and Joey and produced albums, and Dean, the bass player, was an amazing musician, and we had fun. We just would kick each other in the ass on stage. And the guy who wrote the songs, I don't like to say names, he says, I don't want to do it anymore. I want to put it to bed. You wrote the songs. You want to put it to bed. The lead singer doesn't want to put it to bed. The lead guitar player doesn't want to put it to bed. The drummer doesn't want to put it to bed. So he wanted us to call themselves, like the Pizza Boys or something. So this way we would make no money and not use the thing that he... Last time I talked to him, he told me he thought I robbed him. I robbed him, even though Ross and I came up with the name together. So anyway, I have no use for those people in my life. There was a time and place for all the Dictator fans that was beautiful and wonderful and exciting. And it's in a box, and that box can't be opened. It's locked in, and it's for the fans.
It's everywhere, man. Listen, go to Wikipedia. Dick Manitoba, you'll find the whole story's there. I wanted to hear some of the music. I punched it up on Alexa. Hey, Alexa, let me hear All I Love's Cars and Girls. You know what I mean?
I know, but nobody ever heard the songs I wrote. Yeah.
Gonna make it happen. We're gonna make it happen.
I wrote 13 on the album, 5, 18. I'm up to about my 24th song. And I haven't gotten it out there.
The first step is I want my family, my 69-minute eargasm, my ECW family from wrestling, whatever, anybody who knows me, anybody who's listening to this podcast, but whether it's to the 1,000 people listening now maybe, or the 10,000 that we're getting back to, or if we're blessed to get to 100,000 downloads a week, however many people it is of you, this place is it's normal in size, it's average in size, it's moderate and reasonable in size, but it is a hideout, it is a hideaway, it is a cove for like-minded people. I love it here, you will love it here, and the first thing you need to do if you're from New York City, or if you're not and you're going to be here in New York City, yeah, it's a little bit off the beaten path of Midtown, but not by much. If you're willing to go on a 1.5-mile excursion from everything in Midtown, you will find one of the coolest gems in this town, and get to Manitoba's absolutely. And listen to the music, man, because that Dictator stuff is ahead of its time. It is proto-punk. It is the reason why stuff like the Ramones, the Misfits, and everything you love exists. But I'm sorry, Dick, I didn't mean to cut you off. All right. Let's move forward and let's talk, because the 70s is...
I just wanted to say about the record I made, and the reason I quoted Bowie was because I'm going to make something that's my lyrics, that's my heart, that's my romanticism, that's my seriousness, that's my humor, that's my silliness, that's my rock and roll. That's called Born in the Bronx. That's the name of the record. Done with me and this guy, John Tiven, who's a brilliant musician and worked on 60 albums, works with Steve Cropper, did the last Wilson Pickett record, and he did the music, and I did the lyrics. And it doesn't sound like a Dictators record. It sounds like Handsome Dick Manitoba singing his lyrics with John Tiven and all of his history of working on 60 records, coming up with music that he feels fits. Now, we're not trying to be 20 years old, and we're not trying to be punk rock from the 70s. It's a rock and roll album. And that's what it is. And that's why I quote Bowie saying, just do it, put it out there. Those will decide I don't like this. This sucks. Those will go, wow, this is pretty good for a first album. And then you make more records. And I already have another 11 songs.
And that keeps it alive, man. You know what I mean? Who will save rock and roll? The quality fucking people that dedicate themselves and that do get chosen by the people who follow the art. They'll be the ones one by one that save rock and roll and keep it alive, man.
I just want to get out what I haven't. I have something to say. If I really don't have something to say, I don't have to be a rock star. I'll try something else. But I still feel I have something to say. And there's still a lot of other things I want to do. I want to get a book out. I want to get up on stage and have a still thing behind me where I can do one still at a time and tell stories, because I'm a storyteller. And I would do like my idea, without talking to anybody professional, which so it might change drastically. We do a few 5 to 7 minute stories, and then the big one called 93 days, which is how long I was banned from my own home that I own by a judge.
Wow. 93 days, huh? 90 wasn't good enough.
Well, it wasn't supposed to be 93 days. It's supposed to be 2 more months. But my third time in court, my lawyer, who's so good, said, listen, you're going to plead guilty to disorderly conduct. It's not a crime. So you have no record of ever committing a crime. So after the 93 days, I had never committed a crime. The DA agreed to it. The prosecuting attorney agreed to it. And as I knew in the beginning, I would win. But everybody took their shots at me. Everybody made me a piece of shit all the way through. And I knew at the end I would win. And I did.
Harry Slash from Harry and the Slash Tones, ECW Music Man.
Does the music?
Yeah, has known you for a long time.
Really?
Yeah, Sad Boot Song, Hookah Blues. Yeah, he did all the ECW music. Has known you for a long time. It's over 30 years.
I know something. My friend's got a wrestling organization called New York City Wrestling Connection.
New York Wrestling Connection out on Long Island, sure.
He's a very, very close friend of mine. And
do you know John Kersey, or do you know Shane, or who do you know over
John
there?
Kersey, I know. How do I know him?
He just came out. I put up the Facebook Live, me walking here, and he caught it, and he was very active, and we were talking about the Lower East Side a lot.
The guy who calls himself Jim Landis.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's his name on AJ. His name is AJ. And he's one of the guys.
I love those guys at NYWC, yeah.
He's a great guy. And when you walk through to get to the stage, you walk down the little ramp to get to the ring, that brick thing is from the ECW.
Oh, yeah, that's right. They have that part of the set. That's right. Harry Slash loves you, loves the Dictators, big into trivia, and I was talking with him about you and questions that I could ask and stuff like that, and he mentioned that you played on the third to last and second to last, so 2 of the last 3 nights, CBGBs.
Yeah.
How was the vibe when it was closing, I hate to ask?
It was Friday and Saturday night. Debbie Harry and Chris Stein doing acoustic opening up. I got up and I made a speech and I said, listen, everybody, we have to live in the moment. It'll be dead in a few days. When it's dead and you pass by it, be sad. Today, this moment, right now, the Dictators are playing, and we're playing this great place called CBGB's. Let's be in the moment, and let's enjoy the moment. Let's be sad when we have to be sad. You're being sad now. You're making a happy moment into a sad moment, and you don't have to.
Cut a little wrestling promo. Wrestling promo never hurt nobody. That's awesome.
That was a fact. It's like, we're having a great time. But I'm sad it's going to close. In 2 weeks, when you walk by and the door is shut, be sad. Right. Like your cat's still alive. And then for 2 more days, and you don't know how long. And then the third day, he dies. Then you be sad. I think I'll start being sad. You know what that is? People think that if they get ready to be sad, it's going to give them more control and it won't be as sad. And it's bullshit.
You're so right. I find that's true about me too. Getting sad too early, so I try to prevent that and try to keep it and staying sad too long. You know, being sad too much before, too much after the fact. Like you say, live in the moment.
After you as individual, you can't help. You mourn the way you mourn. Everybody mourns differently.
Sure. Why wrestling? And I hate to, and people who know me are probably surprised that it sounded that way. But what I mean to say is, you're such a musical genius. Everybody knows you for your music lyrics.
Stop it.
No, you are. It's true. It's true. But
I'm a good entertainer.
And maybe that's why wrestling. But what I mean to say is, did you find it on TV as a kid? Is it something that maybe a member of your family took you to live shows? What's the connection? How did you fall into? Because you're named Handsome Dick Manitoba, which is a wrestling name. And then the handsome part of it is a nickname, like you've said before, a throwback to the Valiants, right?
Yeah.
But how just... Because you've had a big love for pro wrestling, and you've had tons of people here at the bar, and you've got tons of pictures up here at the bar. Why is wrestling such a big part of your life, and how did it happen to come that way?
Started off, I'd say, in the early 60s with my grandfather from Russia and Poland. He was from Russia and Poland.
Wow.
That's what he told me, that the little town had changed sometimes from one country to the other.
Kind of near the Ukraine then or something like that, yeah.
And he, probably 62, 63. Actually, this before this, in the Borscht Belt, I spent time up at the Catskill Mountains. Yep. There was this guy named Neil, and I think his parents owned the soda fountain part of everything. Huh. And this was probably 62 or 61. I was a little kid, so I didn't love it, but I knew about it a little. I was starting to get into it. And I remember him telling me Johnny Valentine was his favorite with the Atomic Skull Crusher. But the jump from there to sitting in my grandfather's living room, and he looked at me and went, Richard, Bruno, he's the best. He's the strongest. I went, Grandp, Bruno's the strongest. I have a cop from Pittsburgh who knows Bruno, and he has brought over a bunch of Bruno Sammartino writing to Handsome Dick.
Oh,
I have not only that, at WrestleMania that Jim Tiso took us to about 5-6 years ago, I got a picture of me, my son, who was like 10, Bruno, and Chuck Zito.
Wow.
And we're all standing. I go, Chuck, because I know Chuck from the Bronx. I know Chuck from Ever Forever. And he was HA. And it's the four of us. I said, Chuck, my grandfather's in heaven, man. You got to help me. So we took a picture. Then I go in the bathroom, and my kid's in the stall. And you're with the 10-year-old kid. You got to stay in the bathroom with him. So I'm standing in the middle of the men's room doing nothing. And Chuck Zito and Bruno Sammartino come in. So all of a sudden I felt kind of nervous that I'm standing in the middle of a men's room doing nothing. And I go, oh, my son's in the stall. And Chuck just goes, yeah, that's what they all say. So Bruno was amazing. And my grandfather, he might be the only face I ever liked. I watched wrestling with my grandfather. That was like the beginning of really being immersed into it. I was on the periphery before that. I was really young and listened to other people talk about it, watch it a little. But I started getting into it around there, and then it grew. And there's two things. One, I just liked it, and we used to have funny things in the Bronx. We used to have like kids going, it's fake, but when Bruno wrestles in the garden, it's real. It's real, they used to say. And we had things like that. And, I started falling in love with pure heels. It was in my nature. I just hated faces. Faces were like boring. It's God, it's family. And heels were just like, I don't even care about the belt. I just want to inflict pain.
Who are some of your favorites? I know we've talked about the Valiant Brothers.
Well, I have in my list of books, the Punk Rock Book of Lists. My list is my favorite wrestlers.
Nice.
Well, Blassie's my favorite of all time. Up at the top, obviously the Valiants. Killer Kowalski's up at the top. A lot of guys I saw like I wanted to put Bruiser and Crusher there because I'd read every magazine, Wrestling World, Wrestling Review, and with like, wow, Bruiser and Crusher, they're amazing. but I didn't see
That
them.
was the only way to see them back then was the magazines because they were stuck out in Minneapolis and Chicago
They worked
and
for certain
Milwaukee.
organizations, who I really loved that came here from L.A., from the Olympic Auditorium, was John the Maniac Tolis. Fort Bruno. So I'd go to the Garden all the time. When I got older, I went to the Garden with some brilliant guys. I went with Nick Tosches, who's a fantastic writer, loves wrestling, and it's just so funny when he talks about wrestling. And then I went with Richard Meltzer, the godfather of the Dictators.
Nice.
And, Stan Stasiak was the favorite wrestler of Tosches. And I'm not sure who Richard liked best. But you got to throw names at me because
you've got to love, respect, and admiration for the Destroyer, who made his reputation in Japan.
Love the Destroyer. I love like all the heels, all the I go back to people you probably don't even know. I go back to the difference between this man handing his son $1 million organization, turning it into $1 billion. Now, when I go back to the originals, the films, they seem so boring because it's sort of like a car crash movie as compared to like maybe an Alfred Hitchcock movie. You're talking about guys that were heels because they had a black cape and black trunks
and presence.
And but they came out and they would just go like this and they were bad guys.
Yeah.
Right? The Magnificent Maurice.
Yeah.
And what was his
Skull Bernard. You go back to like the 50s and stuff like that now. Hard-boiled Haggerty, and I know what era you're going back
to. The 60s.
From trading tape. 60s,
Bernard, Brute Bernard and Skull Murphy, Bobo Brazil, the Magnificent Maurice, and there's another guy who used to finish people with the corkscrew. That was his finishing hold, the corkscrew. Magnificent Maurice, the handsome Johnny Barron.
Yes.
Now, there was a guy named the great Hans Mortier, and he was.
But now this is when you were first watching, right? So this is the TV that you were getting, the whole Skull Murphy, Brute Bernard, like that whole.
Later,
you're getting that TV later.
Yeah,
okay. So you're not going back and historicizing. You're actually watching it on TV.
And Mortier, the great thing about him, the greatest moment in wrestling history. There were two greatest moments in wrestling history. One with Fred Blassie making a surprise appearance with a belt. The belt was like this big. And Fred Blassie on the Dick Van Dyke Show. And he did this thing called the Twizzle where he picked you up and spun you around. The other greatest moment was the greatest TV show ever, the Abbott and Costello TV show. And Abbott walks by and he turns around and goes, "Hey, Wild Red Berry, how you doing?" Great wrestler in the 40s. Amazing manager. So
great mind for the business, great manager. Yeah.
He managed the great Hans Mortier, and his finishing hold was a full Nelson, and his hands were so strong he couldn't separate them. So he had to come in. His manager would come in, Red Berry, with a cane and pry his fingers apart. It was amazing. And then I mean, there's millions of them. I can't think of them right now. But not the 80s things. Mine ended in the 60s and 70s. The greatness. And those are the people I saw. And those are the people I loved. And those are the people I followed. And then, if you want to get into philosophy about wrestling and why I love it and why I think people are assholes who don't get it or who put it down or say it's fake, I have plenty of those feelings too.
I'm going to leave ECW specifically alone, which seems counterintuitive because that was my bread and butter and that's my wheelhouse.
Hold on. I adore ECW. I'm supposed to do on my podcast. I'm supposed to get I can't remember his fucking name. He does a podcast. He's supposed to be a guest on mine with Keith Elliott Greenberg. You know Keith?
Yeah.
Keith's a good friend.
Sure. Author.
Keith's coming on, and I just for some reason I forget names, but yeah. My second date with my ex, who I was with for 18 years. My second date was ECW at Hammerstein. I loved ECW. I hated that Vince bought it.
I might be doing I don't. Okay. There could very well be an ECW podcast, an ECW themed podcast that it's been announced and it's gone back and forth, and under the purview of Conrad Thompson, who does all of the big wrestling podcasts, JR, Tony Schiavone, Eric Bischoff, and it would be the ECW sibling or cousin of those. And because we're going to have an ECW specific podcast, I'd love to have you on that so that we could talk specifically ECW. So I'm not going to run the 90s and ECW into the ground on this show. But if we were to fast forward all the way till now, are you still watching wrestling? Are you keeping up with the scene? And as close as you can to recent and to current, what do you think about today's wrestling product? And also, as somebody who's been following it for over 40, 45 years, where do you think the business is heading?
You know, I can't answer all those questions because I'm not up on it. Every year for the past 4 years, I've had Matt Shipp, who is a world-class jazz pianist. I mean, he's considered a genius. He lives in the neighborhood. He loves wrestling. Keith Elliott has come over. Sharkey, Mike Edison has come over, and one or two other people. And we've watched it in my house. And they show me, like, all right, that's a new guy. That's it. So I watch it. And I watch it for how they're selling it. I watch it for how good they are at wrestling. And 2 years ago, I liked it. And then there was always it was one ending. It was like, oh man, they could have done that better. And then we get in arguments because I hated one or two guys.
So then you are still passionate about it.
Well,
if you're
I
arguing
hated
about
these guys, these two guys. And oh yeah, you got to sell it. Yeah, but I hate them. They suck. Their shtick sucks. So there was even a book out of the worst wrestling ideas ever. It was great. And so I didn't watch it this year. So I wasn't up. I didn't know who's champ. What I don't like about it is these big, over puffed up guys who just do big moves, slowly walk toward big moves, slowly walk toward. I like sort of mid-sized guys, not too small, who are athletes.
Yeah.
I like athletes.
Yeah.
And I'll probably watch it next year. My son got out of it as he got older, and I got back into basketball. But I'll never be totally out of wrestling. I'll always find out who's the champ, and then I have to find out the different championships now. They have all these championships. The more championships, the more you can sell.
Tell us about the bar as one of the last things we talked about before time requires that we leave each other or we part ways. You know, it's that time of the afternoon where you've got somewhere to be. Tell us about the bar and get people in here.
But I wanted to talk about wrestling.
We're going to have you back on.
I just wanted to say...
I don't want you to miss your kid's baseball game, man. I don't want that on my head.
People who say it's fake or how could you watch it? And I say, movies are fake. What do you mean? I go, do you go to movies? Yeah. Do you ever cry at a movie, at a sad, sad movie? I cried at this movie called The Boy in the Striped Pajamas.
Huh.
Have you ever seen it?
I haven't.
I'll give you $50 if you don't cry during that movie.
Huh.
Yeah, it's about a boy in a well-to-do German family and a fence and a concentration camp. And the boy keeps going to the fence to the kid in striped pajamas who keeps going, and they make friends. And he goes, "Why are you in there?" And it's like fucking deadly.
Wow.
It's The Boy in the Striped Pajamas. You watch that movie, brother. Watch that movie.
Try to find it.
I think it's my son made me watch it. So I say, "Do you cry?" Yeah. Do you know that there's 40 people with cameras around that? It's fake.
Right.
It's all fake.
And there's CGI and there's stuntmen and there's body doubles and there's.
You're not crying at two people in the street. You're not crying at anything that's really happening. So they don't sell themselves. They sell themselves as sports entertainment. It's comic books. It's an insular world, like comic books are an insular world. It's got its own world, its own rules, its own regulations, its own way of being a good wrestler. And if you take it on that level, instead of looking at this one-dimensional, like, it's fake, then you might like it. And if you just want to say it's fake, then, it's one of my, not criteria, but it's one of my tests. What do you call it? Litmus tests.
Yeah.
If you don't like the Beatles, you're an asshole. If you don't like professional wrestling, you're an asshole.
It's just such a cop-out to say that it's fake, because depending how you measure, everything's fake. Like we said, movies are fake. They're they're produced. Anything could be called fake, and it's just, it's to not look into it and investigate wrestling if somebody doesn't like it. If the reasoning is that shallow, just that, it's fake, it's a cop-out, and a closed mind is like a closed umbrella.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There's
so much going on in wrestling, and if you don't want to look at it, you don't look at it.
Yeah.
Oh, don't tell me it's raining again. No. Okay.
No.
So the bar. What do you want to know about the bar?
Whatever you want to tell us. I mean, what it says on the tin is Manitoba's. So you're talking to the wrong person if you ask me what I want to know. What do you want to tell us?
I don't want to talk too negative. Here's the thing. The bar right now is something precious to me. I love having my clubhouse to come to and tell people to meet me at my bar. But for it to continue, this would have to be the mainstay of my life. I'd have to be here all the time, taking care of a lot more business than I want to do. At 65, I want to put my album out. I want to put a second album out. I want to do some touring. It could be 20, 30 shows a year, some touring. I want to get my podcast up and running. The new thing I'm trying to do now is get bigger than the podcast, and then let the podcast get bigger off of that, which is a syndicated national show. 2 hours, once a week, Sunday night. Just get a few big cities, Chicago, New York, LA, Boston. If I get that, what I'm doing is I'm a single father now. I'm looking to do radio and make a decent enough living to just be comfortable. So if I do that, I'm going to do the podcast. I want to write a book. I've been offered money to write a book, but I can't spend all my time doing that till I get the other stuff. And see, I have orders. I want to get the national radio show, the podcast up, or the album out, some shows playing. I'm doing all this stuff. I then want to do a book, and I also want to do like a one-man something. It could be part comedy, part serious, but storytelling for like 45 minutes. And then I have the bar. Now, I'd have to give all that up for the bar, because for this bar to run right, I'm going to be here 7 days a week. It's like a business. Like, who's running it? It's a cash business. So I want to keep it open, but I only own a percentage of it. The other man who owns most of it fired me from the best job I ever had. Doesn't ever want to talk to me again. He was a friend of mine for 40 years. I screwed up terribly to him. You can't make other people look. I can say all I want. I screwed up. I fucked up. But come on, give me a chance. Open up your heart. 40-year friendship. Just give me a little bit of work. Anything. He didn't want to hear from me. And then he has his ass kissers who are making money. And the funny thing is, they're not making nearly as much as I did. So they're working like slaves. They kiss his ass totally because he's a big star. And they will not say anything. They will just keep their place. And he owns most of this. And he said, "You're fired, and I'm putting the bar on the market." It's been on the market for about 6 months. And the thing is, it's like he won't even talk to me. And it's just like when he cuts you out of his life. So some people might say, "Hey, Richard, you fucked up. You talk bad about him. What do you want him to do?" What I want him to do is sit down, call me into his office, and have a half-hour conversation about 40 years. Why the fuck did you open up that? Why did you just... And he might say, "I'm tired of you doing this shit, going online. I told you, stop going online." But to cut somebody out of your life like that and say, "Open up your heart, man. I'm a single father. I've worked for 40. I know you for 40 years. I've worked for you for 14 years. Never missed one show on Sirius Satellite Radio." And then the company said I could come back to work for them because they originally fired me. They said I could come back, but you have to work for that station. And he said, "No way." So he is who he is. That's his decision. I am who I am. I got to move on. As a grown-up, I got to move on. I got work to do. I got to take care of my son.
Story's going to continue telling itself here at Manitoba's. And your personal story, too, man, your personal journey. 65 years old, still plugging away like you're 15, 25, still wanting to know what the next chapter, what the next couple chapters are going to be. Most people happy to be retiring at age 65, and you want to get on with the beginning of your Act 3, man. I mean,
I never want to retire. Never want to retire. I don't want to wake up in the morning and not have something that excites me about life.
I love it. I love it. It's a good outlook. It's a really good outlook to have. Well, we're gonna be back, man. I'm gonna keep coming back until, God forbid, I mean, if there's a lock on the door.
It sounds like a threat.
No, yeah, no. Well, yeah, depending how you. No, but I'll be back because now I'm hooked. The place is great. I'd love to be in here when it's open. You know, this is my first time, only time here so
He
far.
usually does business later at night. Daytime slow. Avenue B is not a good walk by for daytime.
Give the owners something to think about, folks. Come by, stop by, see the rock, see the wrestling, see everything that's in here, buy some drinks. Give Dick and give the owner, give him something to think about as far as this place sticking around. Because if that can be done, that needs to be done. There's a lot of coolness in here, man, and there's a lot of history. Dick, I want to thank you for your time so much.
My pleasure,
Really
man.
a pleasure and a privilege speaking with you. We're going to keep up with you when the ECW podcast launches. If you don't mind, I want to have you back on so that we can talk about ECW in your life.
I just know I went about 5 times, and I hated when it was sold because to me that's what wrestling should be like. But, you know, any man who loves rock and roll and wrestling like you do, my kind of guy.
I appreciate it. And fans, that's Handsome Dick Manitoba, the man. We'll be back with more 69-minute eargasm after this.
You know, folks, it is amazing that for the past 2 episodes on this show, we've had guests on that were pioneers in their field. This episode, of course, we had Handsome Dick Manitoba, a pioneer in the punk rock scene, and the last episode, it was John Arezzi, a pioneer in the wrestling convention scene. And speaking of wrestling conventions, of course, I know that you know that later this month, this Memorial Day weekend, StarCast 2 is going to be kicking off in Las Vegas, and our host, Joel Gertner, will be appearing at StarCast 2 for an Extreme Arena backdrop photo op meet and greet. That's right, Joel Gertner is going to be on hand at StarCast 2 for a photo op and a meet and greet. It's going to be great. Not only that, he's going to be serving as a producer, working on behalf of Conrad Thompson for StarCast on Fight there. So check out the Fight TV app. If you haven't done that already, be sure to do so. Check out all the content there that Joel's going to be taking a hand in producing. It's going to be great. It's going to be awesome. If you guys can make it out there, definitely hit up Joel. If not, definitely check out what they're going to have on the Fight TV app. It's going to be a blast. But enough about that, guys. In honor of StarCast 2 kicking off, we're going to throw back to this music audio mashup, The Elite mashed up with Pat Benatar for something that was produced from the mind of Joel Gertner by our previous producer, Josephine. It's called Invincible.
I liked him right away because I thought to myself, man, that guy's as crazy and as ambitious as us, Nick. So I said, hey, let's take this guy, let's ride with him, let's dine with him, let's hang out with him.
Hangman never paid for a single meal, by the way.
Hangman's like 21 years old, he's too young to pay for meals. But Cody came up with this wild idea. He said, Young Bucks, Bullet Club, I think that we could put 10,000 asses and 10,000... And knowing that my brother and I are pretty much up to absolutely anything. I mean, we invaded Raw that one time.
Guys, technically we were in the mall across the street.
Hey, man. But it didn't take just 3 men. It didn't take just the Young Bucks and Cody. It took each and every one of the people standing in this ring. This was a group collaboration. All the people in the band. And most importantly, as cheesy as it sounds, all 10,000 plus of you. You guys want good pro wrestling. You guys want good entertainment. And what we presented to you in those 4 hours and 57 minutes, oh my God, was our vision of what Yeah!